But I do know that the baby was in a coma and they were looking at some serious charges if the baby died. What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to my channel. So as you can see from the thumbnail and the title, man, today I'm gonna tell y'all a story about the time a 2-year-old got a hold of some. Now I don't 100% know if it was oxy, oparin, or fentanyl. It was one of the three. It was a very strong opiate that the 2-year-old ended up getting a hold of. But the beginning of this story starts when I was around 23 years old. I'm almost 33 now, so this was about 10 years ago. I was locked up in McMinn County, Tennessee. This guy and his wife had ended up getting locked up. They put the guy in the pod I was in, right? So, and I don't remember his name. I know his last name was Hatfield. That's all I really remember about the guy. He was an older cat, man. He was looked like he was in his late 50s or something. So he ended up coming in, he was real open about what had happened, didn't try to hide it. They would do these little prayer groups in the pod and stuff. Every jail usually does stuff like this. You have like a prayer circle or whatever. So they would do these little prayer circles and he would talk about it. Now what had happened was, now these guys, or these people they were drug addicts, obviously, and I want y'all to get a message out of this story. So stay to the end, because this is actually important, man. This happens, this happens in the world, it's crazy. So they had ended up leaving a pill out or something on a counter, maybe dropped it in the floor or something. I don't 100% know exactly how it happened, but they had left a pill out and they wasn't supervising this 2-year-old, their son, like they should have been. Probably nodding out, doing whatever, and that baby had ended up getting a hold of one of those pills. And, baby 2-year-olds put shit in their mouth, man. They put things in their mouth all the time. You gotta watch them. You gotta watch a 2-year-old. So this baby had ended up finding one of these pills and ate it, put it in his mouth. And now I don't know if he swallowed it or he just put it in his mouth, but being a 2-year-old, something like fentanyl, opana, or oxy is gonna be strong enough to definitely kill a 2-year-old baby, man. So I think the baby swallowed it. I'm not 100% sure on that, but what had happened is they ended up noticing that the baby was basically sedated and he wasn't acting right. So they noticed the baby wasn't acting right? So obviously, as parents, they get worried. They don't know what the hell's going on with their kid. They call an ambulance. Ambulance comes. Paramedics deal with things like this, so they know what to look for. They quickly realized what had happened to this baby, that the baby had got a hold of some drugs, and he was basically overdosed. The baby overdosed, basically. So not basically, that's what happened. The baby overdosed. So they ended up obviously taking them to jail, because that's child neglect, child abuse. I forget exactly what the charge was. So this guy comes in jail, kind of tells his story. He's always in prayer circles praying about it. What had ended up happening to this baby is it put the baby in a coma. Now I had ended up spending about probably a month. I did about a month with this guy because I ended up getting out before all this came to a head. So I can't tell you exactly what the outcome of it was. I hope, I like to think that the baby made it and they learned from their mistakes and everybody was good, but I don't know what happened with it. But I do know that the baby was in a coma and they were looking at some serious charges if the baby died. Murder. They might be in prison still to this day. Like I said, this was 10 years ago. They could still be locked up over this if that baby died. But the reason I wanted to tell this story is because this is important, man. I like to put meaningful content out to people that can maybe open your eyes to certain situations. And if you're doing drugs and you got kids, man, pay attention. Pay attention to what you're doing. Now, I can speak on this, even though I don't have kids, I can speak on this because when I was doing fentanyl, the strongest damn opiate you can get, I would nod out all the time. But check this out, I always knew where my drugs were. If there was one thing I knew, it was where I kept my drugs. I kept up with my drugs more than I kept up with my cell phone. So if you got kids, you're struggling with drugs, I've got all the sympathy in the world for you, but be responsible when it comes to the kids, man. Don't be reckless with your drugs, leaving drugs out. Babies will pick shit up and put it in their mouth. They do it all the time. All the time. That's what they do. They don't know any better. So the message that I would get out of this story if I was you is, simply getting high can turn into a really life-changing situation if you're not paying attention to what the hell you're doing. If you got kids running around, don't leave your drugs out and go get help, And if you're struggling with not fentanyl, but just any addiction, really hit that subscribe button, like the video. I drop content related to this all the time. But this story's important, man, because this stuff happens. It's sad, but it's true, but it happens. And it's just a sad situation. Like I said, if that baby had ended up dying, then I'd say they're still in prison over. And it's not like they meant, they didn't mean to hurt their kid, but they did by being irresponsible and reckless. I've got other stories with reckless parents too. I'll be talking about them too. I know a couple that lost their kid because they got high on Xanaxes, nodded out, and the kid ended up out in the street. And somebody called the police on them. But I'm going to get into that story in another video. But yeah, guys, pay attention to your drugs. Even if you don't got kids, go get help. Pay attention to what you're doing. If you do got kids, man, learn something from this video. And I hope I give you the extra incentive that you need to pay attention to where the hell you're putting your drugs. Keep that shit put up. If you want to get high, do what you're going to do, man. But keep your drugs put up away from the kids. Because that baby didn't know what he was doing. That baby didn't know what he was doing. And ended up, like I said, I hope he's still alive, but, nonetheless, he was in a coma over this. And he was in a coma for a good minute, too. So, over something that baby didn't even have any control over. The parents had all the control in the world. And I know some of y'all are probably going to be wondering, well, what happened to the parents? People were sympathetic of the situation. You would think a situation like that might get you hurt in jail because it's a touchy subject. Usually crimes involving kids can get you killed or really hurt. But people was real understanding of this guy's situation because, even though he was reckless, and he was an older cat too, he wasn't a young guy, but even though he was reckless, not he, but they, it was him and his wife that got locked up, or him and his old lady. They, at the end of the day, they didn't mean to do what they did, but whether you mean to do it or not, they hurt somebody, and you can't change that. But what you can change is being responsible about how you're gonna do your drugs. I would suggest you just go get clean, but I know how much of a battle that is. All I'm saying is if you got kids, be responsible, keep your drugs put up, know where you're putting your drugs, and do your thing, man. And subscribe to the channel, man. Subscribe to the channel for more motivational, getting clean type of content. And that's my message for today, guys. But you already know what it is. I'm just a guy that decided to get on YouTube and share his life with the world. And as always, peace out.